Now that, I'm very proud to say, is standard on all Mazda vehicles. That's not a federal regulation. It's not even a rating. That's something that just speaks to our core philosophy, is that we do not want to have people have to pay extra for something that is proven to save lives and reduce crashes. So that's standard on every vehicle that Mazda sells.
Welcome to the Canary Report, the podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real-world stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I'm your host, Michael Zhao. In each episode, I sit down with exceptional leaders who are transforming how risk and safety are managed. Whether you're a leader of a nationwide EH&S program in a high-risk industry, or you champion workplace safety across 200 retail locations, this podcast is for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Canary Report, the podcast for risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives to hear real stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I am your host, Michael Zhao, the founder and CEO of Yellowbird. Today, I have Jennifer Morrison. I am so excited to have her. She is the Director of Vehicle Safety Strategies at Mazda North America Operations. I want to thank Jennifer for being here and give you a little bit of background on why I am just so thrilled. Besides being a gearhead and loving vehicles, I also read about her background, and I'm just so honored that Jennifer, you're here with us today. Jennifer brings more than a couple of decades, hard to believe, in experience in vehicle safety. She's been a investigator, a regulatory compliance leader, various roles at NTSB and the US DOT, so the Department of Transportation. She leads Mazda's newly established Vehicle Safety Strategy and Communications Department. She is the company's vision advocate for No Fatalities Society by 2040, which is super exciting. I love that concept. And Jennifer has been instrumental in advancing crash avoidance technology, improved rear seat occupancy protection, and shaping holistic safety combined with engineering policy and driver education. I am so grateful that you're here, Jennifer. I hope I did not embarrass you, and I also hope that I gave you as much accolades as you deserve. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot, but I have to promise I've had a lot of fun doing it, and automotive safety has been a really compelling area to work in. Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to have a conversation about it.
Fantastic. Well, before we kick off, while we kick off, I suppose, I'd love to hear about your personal side of your journey, your family, and the things that you would like to share with us about who you are as a person, because Yellowbird is a human company that uses technology to match humans to humans. And this podcast is about humans and our journey in safety of all sorts. So tell us about yourself.
Oh, I love that. Well, yeah, let's start at the core, right? So I'm originally a Midwesterner. I feel like that's an important part of my story. I was born and raised Minnesota and Iowa, and coming from that environment where it's very wholesome and natural, and kind of especially growing up in the 80s, it was a lot of fun, right? So I really am a person that comes from just wanting to have fun, enjoy life. And I got really involved in cars when I was young and growing up in the Midwest, because they were freedom, right? Like I was so ambitious as a young person. I wanted to get my first job at 14, start driving right away, have that freedom. And so growing up in the Midwest, that was something that originally was just a very high priority for me and came to me very naturally. Like, let's get moving, let's doing, right? I had a lot of energy. I attended some university classes even when I was in high school. I knew I wanted to lean into academics. I found a really good place in it. And because the cars and loving cars and transportation, I come from very blue collar roots of mechanics and carpenters and hands-on people. I'm very naturally like hands-on. I can tinker and fix just about anything. So I ended up in engineering school, and it just was a great fit for me. And at the time, especially, in the 80s, there was a lot of wonderful movement around having young women, especially in engineering. I absolutely benefited from that, and I was able to go out east. I wanted to go to the East Coast. So even though I'm originally from the West,
It's not that far. It's not that
yeah,
far. I'm from California. It's a lot further for
that's
me.
a lot further. That's a
So
lot
please.
further.
Yeah.
Right. but I was really drawn to the East Coast universities. I ended up going to the University of Pennsylvania in downtown Philadelphia. So what a culture shock,
Oh,
right?
wow. Yeah.
I went from bullfrogs and crickets to sirens and gunshots.
Uh-huh.
Sorry,
Yep.
Philadelphia, you're a great city, but it's
It
a
is,
little
but that's
chaotic
part of the
for
city. That's part of the
as
city.
part of the
Yeah.
city. West Philadelphia is where the university is, but I had a wonderful experience there. Studied bioengineering, forces, stresses, and strains on bodies and how people are
Huh.
hurt and injured. Um, Wanted to tie that right back to automotive, so I ended up in vehicle safety for the government originally right out of college, but then now for the private sector. But yeah, I ended up moving to DC for my first job. I met my husband at a bar in downtown DC, and now we live just outside of the city. We have 2 boys. I have a teen driver, so we're gonna have to talk about that. Um, and then I also have a 13-year-old son, who will eventually be a teen driver, and they're great. They're wonderful people. They're very different than me. They like sports, a lot of TV watching. They even watch golf on TV. How boring. Like I can't
Hey,
watch.
hey.
I
By the way,
know
you sound you sound like my wife. She's like, "Is golf on
right.
again? Why are you watching golf?" She's a huge sports fan of football, and I'm watching
Okay.
golf, which is so funny. But so how old your
I can't stay still. Like, I can't watch
Yeah,
TV that long. I think that just kinda speaks to, like, me how I am as a person. Like, I'm always
me
doing
too.
something.
Me
I'm
too.
constantly moving. If they could be watching TV, but I'm like, I'm building a piece of furniture or fixing a
Sure.
faucet. Like,
Sure.
sorry. Yeah.
I
Like,
love
it's
it.
just
No, 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 I love it. No, this is what the podcast is about. This is
right.
the human aspect of Yellowbird. So how old is your driving son? Is he just 16 or is he
He is turning 17 next week. Next week, he's lived a whole year
a whole
with a
year?
car. Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, I have to steal this saying for one of my friends, who
Yes.
also has a teen driver.
Yes.
She says, like all adolescents of our species, they are idiots. But there but there are idiots,
Yes,
and we
they
want
are.
them to come home safely from all of
Yes.
their adventures to the outside world. So
Yes.
I feel that very deeply for my son. He's a very bright boy,
Yes.
but at the core, their brains aren't fully developed yet. He's 17,
Absolutely.
almost 17 years old. He is an idiot, and
Yeah.
he needs
We all were at
work.
that age. Yep. Yep.
We are. We have to, we have to get them to where they're fully developed. And he's mine, right? So
Yes.
I want to,
I
it
love
makes me,
that.
and I want to keep him safe because I know the statistics and I know too much. I know too
Well,
much
yeah,
about
you
highway
do
safety.
know too much. I'm gonna do a little plug for Mazda, but also for Carvana. My one of my memories that I will always remember, and I think it was the most incredible marketing strategy that any company has ever done. And apologies because it's not a Mazda strategy; it's actually a Carvana strategy. Was the big token at the Carvana, they had the tall thing, and you put the token in, and it would bring you down a car that you purchased. You know those big towers of cars that you see around? Well, my son, when he turned 16, our son, Jennifer and mine, Nick turned 16. And, we were going back and forth on all the different vehicles and safety ratings, which, by the way, we will get to that. And you guys do a wonderful job. And frankly, what we wanted to spend and size, all the things you do as a parent. And we narrowed it down and we found a great CX5, I think it was that year, a little mid-size Mazda, and we went down to Carvana. And they put in the big coin, and it grabbed the vehicle, and it brought it down, and it rolled it forward, and it was. I have never seen a family so excited about getting anything delivered. It was almost like a baby was coming out. We were all just so excited. Those moments, and then when he got in it and drove away by himself, that excitement turned to absolute panic. It was like, uh, okay, I guess, he had only had his license for like 3 weeks, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, he's gone. So yes, I know exactly what you feel, and the idiocy of the teenage boy in particular is, I think, even a little bit more extreme than the teenage girl. I'll put it that
They
way.
tend to be a little bit riskier, but I have to
Yeah.
ask you, I'm trying to see if I ask you a question now because you were
Oh,
talking about that,
please, by all
like,
means.
how wonderful that felt. Well, how scary it was at first,
Yes.
tear that panic, that terror. But
Yeah.
now, are you feeling freedom? Are you feeling that positive? Because
Oh,
for us,
yeah.
it really has unleashed so much freedom.
Oh, well, that's the thing. I mean, well, that's a whole nother podcast in its own right, being married for 25 years and my daughter now driving. And so the official, we still need to know where you are, what you're doing, make sure that we're being good parents and she's being responsible, but we're no longer a taxi. And just that shift, the freedom, the freedom of that is such it's actually quite overwhelming because you realize that you have to figure out what your life looks like when you are not scheduling driving one of the two kids or three or four, however many people have somewhere at any given time. And all of a sudden, we're not empty nesters, but we're getting darn close. He's in college and she's a junior in high school. So yes, that freedom and that, you know what? It's funny. You've used that word several times. And I love the fact that you're using the word freedom because when I was a kid and when you were a kid, we're approximately the same age, growing up at the same time, and I couldn't wait to get my license. I made my appointment on my birthday morning, and I was ready, and I saved up, and my grandparents gave me some money, and I saved up for the difference or for the delta. And I had my car, and now and I know you're in the automobile world, but with autonomous driving and with, people that are using Uber all the time and other ways of transportation, I I think it's quite odd. Now, there's still a lot of kids that love driving and can't wait, but there's a lot. I have a niece that's 26 years old. She still doesn't have her license. And I
Yeah.
don't understand, but they get the freedom through they're not restricted to go anywhere. Like we'd be at home. If we didn't have a car, we'd be at home. That was it. That was my only option.
Yeah, there's so much more choice now. There's Uber, there's friends that drive, there's public transportation if you live in a city. Yeah, the generations have had quite a shift in options and choice. But for us, we've really benefited. I mean, it has been game changing to have a driver. Getting him to drive his brother somewhere, that's when you have both of your eggs in one basket, and it makes me extra nervous, but it is very helpful, and I know it's an important part of his journey and my journey, but yeah, we just all wanna keep him safe.
Of course we do. Well, that's a perfect segue. And a lot of people are wondering. So, on our podcast, we have a lot of folks from OSHA. We have people from occupational safety leaders within their companies, construction, manufacturing, warehouse, distribution. But your world, when we reached out to you, one, because I am a gearhead, I am like you, I love cars, I always have. And I also love the freedom, interestingly enough, of not having the government dictate too many things in my life. And without being overly political, because this is not a political show, but, I'm always very careful about what things that the government should and should not be, mandating, with exception to what they do with automobiles. And I am a car guy and I have cars that can go quite fast and all that other stuff. But I think of all the regulatory compliance and oversight that has come into the world, everything from speed limits to technology requirements like airbags, which I want to talk to you about, and other, sometimes irritating, but often beneficial, or always beneficial, really, technologies like the steering correction capabilities. I still find that very off-putting. But I think this is an area that the government actually did a really great job in taking progressive technology that's making us faster, and more people going faster on public roads inherently has danger. And I think it's been very good. So I want to hear from your perspective about your business journey now that we've talked about your personal. So you got out of school, you went to DC, you started working in the government. Where in the government were you? And give us a little wander through your journey.
Right, so, my first job out of college was for, NHTSA, so the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. They're a branch within the US Department of Transportation, and I worked, within that organization in their defects investigation office. So this is 1999, 2000, and the big thing that was happening at the time was the Firestone tire investigation.
Yes,
So for those of us Gen Xers,
yeah, the Ford
uh,
Explorers and the Firestone tires, yeah.
right, the combination of the Ford Explorers, the Ford Rangers,
Mhm.
with those really kind of boxy, high center of gravity SUVs and pickup trucks that had the Bridgestone tires, the Firestone Bridgestone tires that had the tread separations, the delaminations. So those two things ended up with a lot of rollovers. And now I didn't do anything special or interesting. I was just out of college, right? So I didn't have a lead role in any of that. I think I did data entry. I was doing a job. I was measuring tiny micro distances between tire plies and entering them into a Microsoft Excel early version, like 98 spreadsheet. Uh, but it was interesting because it did open your eyes to the things that happen, right? There were these rollovers and people were getting ejected, partially ejected, dying in these crashes. They were fairly, really, mostly the ones we investigated were quite significant. And it did open the door to do more investigation, kind of working in an investigation field within NHTSA. I heard about a job. I was only in NHTSA for 3 years when I'd heard about this job for the NTSB. What's the NTSB? I really didn't know a lot about it. The National Transportation Safety Board. It's this really cool organization that's not within the Department of Transportation. It's actually within the executive branch. And they are really there to oversee and make recommendations to groups like the FAA, like the DOT, other organizations. They're like a safety watchdog, essentially. And they investigate everything from bridge collapses to train crashes to obviously plane crashes. It's the Navy jackets and big yellow letters. And so I took the job over really a leap of faith. I didn't really have all the qualifications or experience that they were looking for in a highway crash investigator. I think they were looking for somebody with like 10 years experience and a master's degree, and I had neither of those things. But I guess I interviewed well, and they were looking for people who were young and energetic who could really go out there and figure out what was going on in highway crashes. And I'm like, that's me. I can do that. So I worked there for 15 years. I absolutely loved it. Absolutely love it. The things I saw though, Michael, oh my goodness. So bus crashes, school bus crashes, some train, a couple different train things that I spent about a month on the Minneapolis bridge collapse.
Were you kind of the emergency responder that as soon as something happened, you got on a plane and went? I mean, was that kind of the role of, all right, get there as soon as possible so that we have as raw of a scene that you can have so that you can do your investigation without any changes in environment? Was it that kind of or could they clean up a bit before you went?
It kind of depended, but it really was more of the former. We would get out there fairly quickly, usually within a day. Now the scene itself was with highway scenes and the roadway infrastructure. Most of that is opened up and things are in a tow yard by the time we get there. But in some cases, no, especially complicated ones. We've got like a bridge and a down into embankment or something like or a bus down into an embankment. It's a totally different situation. So it really depended, but it was a situation in which you had a bag packed under your desk at all times. It made me. I could have a totally separate podcast with you on travel because I made me very adept traveler. I can pack a bag in no more than 20 minutes, and I can live out of that bag for upwards of 2 weeks. Like a really a minimalistic traveler at this point in time. Um, and I've visited every, state in the United States. I've been everywhere. I'm sorry, I've not been to Hawaii, of all places.
What?
Because now I work for a Japanese car company, so I get to go to Japan occasionally. So I
Well,
fly
stop
over.
over. Stop
I've
over
only
and
looked at it from,
spend a
like,
week.
above.
Spend a week there as a layover in quotes. You need to do it grab your
Yeah,
husband. Yeah,
I know, I
for
know.
your
I'm gonna
extended
fix that
layover.
problem.
Extended
I definitely
layover.
need to fix that problem, but I have
Yes.
visited every other state, the continental United States, as part of
Yes.
my work with because we would get deployed. We didn't know where. I could wake
Sure.
up in Virginia where I live, and I could, go to bed in Ohio
Oh
or
yeah.
Washington State or, wherever. So it was cool, but I did that through, raising a family and having young kids and stuff. So it was time to make some different choices. And also it did wear my soul down quite a bit, seeing the same kind of things over and over again. It was the same themes. It was impact rear speed crashes, high speed rear impact crashes. It was um, people falling asleep at the wheel, drivers that were drowsy, impairment. Oh my goodness, impairment such a huge issue in the country. Distraction, people who don't even wear their seatbelts. I mean, that's the simplest thing you can do in a vehicle. The statistics are just so convincing that you should really be wearing your seatbelts. The first thing you should do when you get in your vehicle. So I'd seen all of that, and I really wanted to get ahead of it rather than going out to the crash scenes. That was really, really wearing me down. It's something I needed to do for like my emotional, physical, and career health, right? So so 7 years ago, I had an opportunity to, come and work for Mazda North America operations and start to, expand their safety, support, in compliance, in safety ratings, and then also, in the research and kind of forward-thinking strategies for the company too.
I can't imagine. I always say there's a special place for certain types of career paths. Nurses and doctors, people who, uh, police officers, especially emergency responders who have to arrive on scene and do the best they can do. You kind of are in that same boat, and I don't think anybody really realizes the interesting thing that you just brought up. One of my ambitions with Yellowbird is the toll of travel that it takes on family. I actually am doing a fair amount of travel right now with it, and I did for a long time, but I stopped during when my kids were young, and I did the best I could do to be home more often than not. But there are careers that you can't do that. I was doing it for deliberate and purposeful reasons, but I was also choosing to do it. It wasn't actually my job to you need to leave now kind of a thing. And doctors have that. Like if you are if you are a surgeon and the best in your practice in your line of work, you'll get a call on Christmas Eve and say, "We need you to come in. There's an incident, an emergency, whatever it happens to be." So it's funny because the thesis of Yellowbird was originally hard to find the right people to do investigations, to do trainings, to do surveys. And so how do we identify the right people that are localized to do that? But the real thing was we can't afford to hire all of these people. And so you have to have people that fly and travel and all that kind of stuff. The side benefit of it, or side, I guess benefit, is you don't have this conversation with somebody who is in the investigation or survey or training world that they say, "Oh yeah, my marriage isn't going to make it. My kids don't recognize me. I have to change my career," because there is a toll that takes. And I only have, I mean, and I have a very, very forgiving and gracious wife. And I'll tell you what, some of my travel, I'll be at home for one day between trips, and it's rough. I mean, it's really rough. Your kids are like, "We don't see you anymore." It's like, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm gonna try and be home more, kind of a thing. So it's a rough thing. And your sons were so they were young when you came into this Mazda role, which is great. So you got to actually change that
They were like
environment.
elementary school age when I'd made the shift. And
Perfect.
so it's funny,
Perfect.
my husband is in law enforcement.
Okay.
But no, he doesn't travel. Like he's local law
Right.
enforcement. So he doesn't,
Yes.
it's the times he has spent like a weekend at a sports tournament or something like that. It is so odd because he never goes anywhere without me. And then if he does, and I'm like, "It's so quiet here." I do love it. I think there's a kind of a pro and con to the travel thing. I love that when I travel for work and for all of any of those that are listening, that it is hard. It's hard on the family. But I also love it as a professional because it especially even as a mother, it gives me a little bit of a break. And I wish all parents could have just a mild amount of business travel because it can be, if you do it well, it can be glorious. Um, but it kinda, like you said, take a toll on the family, but because I'd done that emergency response type of a position, and I'm I'm married to a police officer. That we kind of
Who
he kind of
also
got it.
understands who also
Yeah,
understands emotionally what you had to just go through. Like, that is
right.
one of those
And I think I
things.
understand. He the stuff he sees is even was way worse because it's more like the intentional, acts versus everything I
Sure,
saw was more accidental. But
sure.
still, there's that mutual understanding there to some extent. And it was a crazy job. It was a crazy
It
job. I'm really
uh,
glad that I've made this transition. I've been with Mazda now for about 7 years. And
okay.
it's been wild. But now I'm
I
doing all kinds of cool stuff in safety.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So let's talk about the stuff you're doing. This was I love to again this is a human to human discussion. This is what we do, and it's rare that I get the opportunity to speak with somebody who's in regulatory compliance and research and innovation and everything else, and yet you are directly affecting human beings in your work every single day, and the lives that you guys are saving. And I always say the same thing with the safety, OSHA kind of stuff. You want to know the people who are the best at occupational safety are the ones you never hear about because they are actually doing so many of the things well, and it's the unspoken heroes. And it's the same thing in your world when you go to all this data and you say, okay, if we can get the vehicle to brake in 50 feet shorter distance, that we will avoid X number of rear end crashes. I mean, that is a meaningful thing that nobody will ever understand because people don't sit there with their spreadsheet trying to figure out exactly what the difference in the model years made on my distance. But you know exactly what it meant. It meant, there's going to be X number of less issues or crashes or impact by doing that. So it's a fantastic thing. So from a primary role at Mazda, besides being so gracious to be a great advocate and speak about the wonderful parts of the and wonderful company that Mazda is and your safety program, day to day, what is your primary role within the organization? Like somebody says, I mean, you've got it's a big title, it's a big responsibility, but for those who aren't familiar, like what do you do? As much as I hate to say
it's
that,
a great
right?
question. Right. No, it's a great way to ask it. What do you do? So and you mentioned the unsung heroes. So I think that what I do has a lot to do with them, right? So I'm sitting here in the Washington, D.C. area working for Mazda North America, but really all of the heroes, right? All of the heroes, the true engineers, the true creators, the inventors, the innovators of all of these safety technologies and systems are in Japan. Like that's where Mazda Corporation is. We have hundreds of crash safety engineers, hundreds of crash avoidance. You were just talking about braking distance, automatic emergency braking engineers that are developing, designing, and wanting to deploy those technologies. And they need someone here in the United States to tell them how to craft it, to make sure the way that they do it, the way that they package it, specify it, and place it for deployment in the vehicles is compliant. Not only compliant, well, compliance the baseline. So the regulations are written pretty well, like you'd mentioned. We have a really comprehensive set of federal motor vehicle safety standards, but that's our minimum. Of course, we comply to those. And that those engineers in Japan, we refer to the Japan side of Mazda as Mazda Corporation. We always abbreviate it as MC. So
MC,
I
yeah,
call them
the
the
master of
MC,
ceremonies.
the master. They are. They really are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The MC crash safety engineers, the MC internal control development. So that's all your sensors and your
Sure.
algorithms. Those engineers, we're really their eyes and ears. I'm their eyes and ears. My whole team is their eyes and ears so that we can help get their fantastic innovations and ideas deployed into the United States, get into the US market. And when in that process of crafting it and shaping it, not only meeting the regulations, but going several steps above. So the other steps would be making sure we're getting really high ratings. So looking at what the ratings are. So those are optional kind of ratings in the consumer information space. And then really the most important thing is that the technologies that we're developing are actually working and saving lives. So we look at a lot of data and we look at, pre-deployment, post-deployment data. We have connected vehicle now, connected vehicle data. So since about 2018 model year, and this is true for not just Mazda, I say most car companies, and there are some big leaps. I think General Motors started doing OnStar back in the 90s, maybe late 80s. All those are that's telematics and vehicles. So we can actually look at the data and say, okay, what types of crashes are these vehicles getting in? We don't know like all the specifics.
Sure.
It's
It's
asked
aggregate.
to
Yeah, and it's aggregated.
so there's a privacy aspects that are very seriously taken with the data, but we're able to use it for safety research. So, compliance is the baseline, but then we're looking also to really exceed in regulations. But our pinnacle, our most important thing to look at is really, are we getting in less crashes? Are the people in these vehicles less injured if they are involved in a crash? And that kind of sums up what I do, I hope, like making sure that technology is deployed in a compliant, well received, and thoughtful way.
Yeah. And I mean, frankly, it's a feature. It helps you with sales. It really does. And it should. We talked about our kids and we talked about our families. And the most important thing is making sure that they arrive safely somewhere. And, you know, I, there are other car brands I won't bring up, but they advertise these things as, walking away from an accident and the best vehicle, and they state this the best investment that they ever made. And yes, the vehicle got destroyed, but the family is getting together. I think that commercial says everything that you need to know about safety, because at the end of the day, no offense to Mazda or anybody else, it's just a car. At the end of the
It
day,
is just ruined. It's true.
what matters is what's inside of it.
I
Like,
cycle through cars every 6 months, so I wish we were talking about the Carvana thing. I would love to do that. I would love to buy a car through the Carvana,
yeah,
vending machine, but I am really way too privileged. Don't hate me.
yes,
I
yeah,
have, like, a new car assigned to me every 6 months. Even
that's
my
awesome.
16 does because the corporate car benefit is
Oh,
wonderful.
it's awesome.
It is one of a very, very cool perk for working for a car company.
Will you
But we
adopt
cycle
me? Can you adopt me?
I
Can I be
no,
your
I
Can I be your
can't.
son?
I would have many, many children, um, a lot of a lot of children. So that we cycle through cars so much. I believe completely with what you just said. Like, yeah, a car's just a car. Like this is I crash test them, right? Voluntarily. We take these cars out and we destroy them pretty regularly to test them to their fullest extent. So they mean nothing to me either. And that's really the most important thing. What we're trying to do is prevent the most precious cargo, the people, right? And that's what the systems are designed for. That's why we get some of those. We're really proud to have some of those top safety ratings. I mean, it's been the ratings programs, even though the government regulations haven't changed in quite some time, the ratings programs have really been changing. Every year, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, which is the leading ratings program in the United States, they publish a new criteria. So it's there's something new about that criteria every year. I pay That's my Bible. Like, I pay so much attention to that thing, because I want their top rating. I want that, I want it for my company. I want it for my kids. I want it for my friends and family. It helps give us all a little bit extra peace of mind and confidence that if they are involved in one of these terrible crashes, those airbags are gonna deploy. The seatbelt pretensioners and load limiters are gonna kick in and save serious injury. But maybe even more importantly, part of that test criteria now is crash avoidance. So maybe they don't get in the crash at all. They have good headlights, automatic emergency braking, all that stuff. So
When I was teaching my daughter how to drive, and so we live in North Scottsdale, so it's kind of a ways away from her high school. She goes to a Catholic school toward Midtown in Phoenix. So she has to take a pretty busy freeway. Now, I was taking both Nick, my son, to the school next to it for years, and then I took her. So I always have the privilege of being able to take my kids to school. That's the one thing I miss about them driving is I don't drive my kids to school anymore, and I really did enjoy that. And that's why our office, by the way, is 3 miles from their school, and now my kids don't drive with me anymore. Yeah, exactly. I got the benefit for 6 years, and now I'm thinking, what am I doing driving down here every day?
yeah.
My staff's fine with it. That being said, we were driving and she was 16, but it's a very busy 4-lane each direction, 8-lane, freeway. It's the 51. And in the morning, it goes straight to downtown and it's busy. And I'll never forget. And she was not driving a Mazda, but it was another very safe vehicle, known for having great safety features. And I'm looking, keeping my head up high. I'm like, Josie, brake, Josie, brake. And before she could, because I saw up there, these cars were stopped and we're going at 70 miles an hour. And like, and I said to her, and she just wasn't reacting. The car braked for her. And, and then as it did, she did. And she kept control and the car kept her in the lane and all the good stuff that you work on to make sure that when you're braking, it doesn't go into another lane to cause an accident anyways. And I thought to myself, you know what? Thank goodness that this technology exists. I mean, because that is the moment I was sitting there and she handled herself well. We got to school. Don't tell mom. And I'm like, look, I'm going to tell mom that you handled it perfectly. Yeah. And the car helped handle it perfectly too. So, that's a perfect example of the types of things and that I've lived that I'm like, thank God for people like you that help make this happen, because we were moving towards that car pretty darn quickly. I'll be honest. And I am not a nervous Nelly at all in the car. That, but I didn't think we were going to stop. I really didn't.
One of my favorite things to do when I'm speaking to a group, sometimes it's, automotive safety people or just automotive people at large, is to ask how many people have experienced an automatic emergency brake application. And more, I see so many hands go up that they have experienced it. And it's pretty cool. Like, now that technology, not every single automaker or every single even model within a brand behaves the same way, because there isn't like a performance requirement for exactly how that's supposed to work. But there are some standards, and for the most part, they're all working pretty darn well these days. That was voluntarily committed to almost a decade ago. So for the last 10 years or so, now it's not a federal regulation, but it was voluntarily committed to by most automakers. That So it's out there. It's like a 95% of all new vehicles today. And the most important thing is it's actually proven to reduce about 50% of all rear end crashes. Now, it can't do everything, right? Because it's a support system. But looking at some of that data, we're talking about data and like really scientific to it as well, making sure we're understanding what the systems can and can't do and where we can maybe make them better. That automatic emergency braking technology itself, just one type of crash avoidance feature that's available today, is preventing, and we've even looked at some more recent data, it's over 50%. It's climbing up to 60% of all rear end crashes. How wonderful is that, right? And a lot of people say, oh, my teen driver, I'm going to give them the oldest car in the driveway. Now, if that oldest car is within the last 10 years, then maybe that's not such a bad choice. But why wouldn't you give them that additional ability, that additional support, if you can.
Absolutely.
Not every family is set up
Not
in the way
everybody
that,
can, and that's understandable. Of
but
course.
if you could put them in a car that even has the most basic form of automatic
Yeah.
emergency braking, what a gift, right?
It sure is. I mean, I no longer worry about the cars that my family drives, and we're very fortunate, and it's a privilege that we don't have to worry about that. I still worry, like as soon as that was happening, I'm looking in the rearview mirror myself to see what's behind us. Because okay, she was able to stop in time. I'm praying that the person behind us saw this coming and was seeing 3 or 4 or 5 cars ahead like I
Or
did.
they're in a newer car too. I mean,
And that
that's
also stopped.
like
And we did not get hit, so it all worked out just fine, but it was one of those
right.
moments.
Newer cars are inherently safer cars, and I think that,
Sure,
that
they are.
it's a logical assumption to make, and I think most people understand that. But if we can also make cars affordable, that's another thing that Mazda really prides itself on, is that we're not selling $100,000 automobiles, or really anything even near it. I think one of the most expensive vehicles that we have on the road is, you know, topping up in the high 50s. Um, so we have to make new cars affordable, even used cars. There's great used cars. There's a wonderful, back to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. They publish a list of used cars that are safe too. You can go back and look at several model years back and even be making really good choices on pre-owned vehicles that have high safety ratings that are equipped with these safety technologies. So honored to have Mazda all over those lists. But, I think affordability is key, because we do want to put people into newer cars. inherently safer cars, avoid the crashes, and if they are involved in those crashes, do our absolute best to protect them from injury.
So it's funny you should mention data, and because I really am a data geek. Everybody thinks that I'm a tech guy, but really I'm more of a data guy than anything else. But I'm number one a human guy, and I always try to say that because at the end of the day, everything that I do, everything we do, is designed around the human being, and both the human being that does work, but also the human being that helps others do work. Because on my side, on environmental health and safety, it's really complex. You have a lot of moving parts, and talk about lack of standards. You have OSHA standards, of course, and OSHA does a very good job, and DOT does a very good job, and state OSHA, occupational health and safety. It's not actually some are like Arizona ADOSH, Arizona Department of Health and Safety. I mean, they all have their different acronyms, but there's about 27, I think, state-run OSHAs, and then they also have federal, and then you also have industry. If you have food, you're also dealing with FDA. So there's all this complexity, and so one of my ambitions, and you really kind of made me, I don't know, I'd say jealous of the world that you live in, is we as a ecosystem have not standardized to what measurements are good. How do we measure? And so one of the things, and when I say how do we measure, it's not measurement because measurement is a finite data point. But when I go and have a finding, what's the picture I take? How do I describe the finding? What is the like? You go to 5 different consultants and go to 5 different locations and ask them to write down recommendations. Those recommendations are interpretive. And how do you standardize that kind of thing? AI has helped a ton with that. But the other piece is getting companies to accept that you can get third parties to do as well as standards internally. And so it's such an interesting this dialogue around, because your organization, and most importantly, the governance and oversight and the voluntary features that organizations are choosing to do because it is better for the industry. I love that.
Yeah, the ratings programs are really compelling. I think that's where, because it's an opportunity to differentiate yourself, and maybe you have that in your space too. But you wanna be able to know, well, what does it take to do even better than baseline? And how does one measure that? Like, what should I be striving for, right?
Yes, and in the world of that I live in, which is you have to go to every single facility, to the managers of those facilities, to the staff of those facilities, and just taking a big box store as an example, not any individual one, you can have forklift drivers, you can have chemicals on site, you can have ergonomic issues, you can have state and local traffic laws, and people are so focused on how you're measuring, like how you're actually executing the job, but they're not standardizing the job. And so, unless they do it internally. And so they're like, oh, my people will do it better than external people. I'm like, no, well, actually, it's a lot more cost effective to use external people if you can control the gathering process. And it's really taken time. We're finally getting there, and I guess it's like the automobile world. It's from the 1800s, right? You've got 1890s that the original vehicles were starting to be developed, and coming into early 1900s, now 2025. I mean, you've got a lot more history than the 1976 or 75 health and safety regulations that started bringing OSHA in. So
Yeah, when I imagine the automotive piece there, I mean, I know we're gonna transition, but one of the things I wanted to make sure, that we pull out of this is that I think there, even within occupational health and and safety, there is an aspect of the drivers, right? So you will, in addition to all the things you were just talking about, like with the forklifts and the chemicals, some of those people are in cars and they're driving, and that's its own world and its own risk. So we overlap there. That's where my world and your world kind of overlap. It's that fleet safety, the aspect of things.
oh, it's so true. In fact, it's so funny you should say that, or interesting, because I always the National Safety Council, which is basically, it's a private organization, but it is very much government. It's in
And
DC.
they're in automotive too.
They're in
They have a lot
automotive as well, and they're a
great.
wonderful group. I know them very, very well. They do lots of studies, and they always give the top, fatalities and injuries, and they say, oh, fall from heights is always the number one. And I said, no, it's not. We just don't measure it, because the number one is absolutely traffic incidents and accidents, because but they don't cover that because it's under DOT. And so because of that, National Safety Council is very much focused on occupational health and safety. And so the drivers that are driving for business versus the drivers that are driving for personal, it's hard to distinguish. It's hard to separate. They don't go over the lines. But I'm still absolutely convinced that distracted driving is the number one training program that we as Yellowbird, but also we as a society, should be double and tripling down on. Maybe we don't need to, because of the technologies that you and Mazda are so, fortunately for all of us, are developing. But there is just behavioral changes and challenges, and that will always be there. And I think that it's really important that we don't overlook that the vehicle, all those forklifts that we do training on, goes into a box truck or a loader truck somebody gets in that and they get on the road. So it's not disconnected. It's absolutely connected.
Yeah, the safest, the most important safety system in the vehicle is absolutely still the human driver. And human drivers, they speed, like you said, they get distracted. I certainly hope not at work, but it does happen. There's even impairment issues, belt use issues. So those are the big topics in automotive safety. It's the same things that you're seeing in occupational safety. We need to have people slow down, make sure they're focused on the driving task, not distracted, certainly not impaired, and absolutely buckled up. I mean, those are the core pieces. And there are technologies even for distraction now. I mean, there's some great stuff that's out there in the insurance world for mobile phone telematics, to help incentivize good driving, and they can tell what you're touching your phone while driving. Fascinating technologies that can supplement the vehicle technologies. And I'm watching those closely, and I really have a lot of hope for some of those, like app and telematics based technologies and usage based insurance platforms, helping to drive down
Yes.
these numbers and
And
fatalities
that's how, and they'll make more money doing it. And that's the thing.
right.
It's still, insurance is a business, and
It
we
is.
can't forget that. And if we do implement some of these things, the insurance organizations will make more money, because they will be able to support that program that allows for less incidents and accidents, and therefore just accidents in this case. I'm used to dealing with human incidents, but accidents in vehicles. How does autonomous driving, and we're going to need to wrap up in a couple of moments, but you know what? I am enjoying this so much. Where are you in your evolution, without disclosing any proprietary information, of course, but where are you in the autonomous driving world? We see the things with the Teslas and the other organizations, and, all that other stuff. Where's Mazda in that journey? Are you, without disclosing too much, really digging into that kind of stuff and the impact of safety on autonomous driving vehicles?
Well, I'll definitely start by approaching it like as the industry at large. In the consumer vehicle industry, so these are vehicles that you purchase as a product and not as a service. The entire industry is at what we call, there's different levels. There's levels 0 through 5, and those in the industry are familiar with them. They're written by SAE International. The level 0 is essentially just a warning. Level 1 can do some control of the either braking or steering. Level 2 is both braking and steering at the same time simultaneously. Level 3 is you can actually take like a little bit of your eyes off the road, and the vehicle has control. But that level 4 and 5, that's what it is, the automated vehicle industry is working on. Now, those today are services. You cannot purchase a level 4 or 5 automated vehicle today in the United States. You can certainly ride in one in many cities in this country. They're fascinating. I think it's a really interesting business model, especially as we lean into customer choice. If the customer, and I'm one of those customers, I'd love to land at an airport and just get a driverless taxi somewhere, I can. But what Mazda's doing is we're selling products to consumers. Well, we're very invested and deploying the level 0, 1, and 2 within that suite. We have the level 2 on the road today in the form of a system that we call cruising and traffic support. So when you set that on your
You can y
vehicle,
so it makes sure that your eyes are on the road, but the vehicle will somewhat drive itself, but you need to make sure you're still paying attention.
the driver is still driving the car. The
Yes.
human driver is still the driver, but the vehicle assists in both the adaptive cruise control. So
Right,
most people have
yep, speed,
experienced
yep.
cruise control, it helps the speed and the having the headway control to the vehicle in front if there's a
Okay.
vehicle in front, and then it also does lane centering at the same time, and all that's working together. Mazda system is a hands-on system. You need to keep your hands on the wheel. If you do not, you will receive a very unpleasant series of escalating alerts that will incline you to put your hands back right onto the wheel.
I
There
hear.
are some technologies out there
Yep,
and some other companies
yep.
uh, have deployed the hands-free versions, which I think are also very compelling. There's a case for those, and if they're done well, I think they can be safe as long as the they're monitoring the driver and they're making sure the hands are stayed on the wheel and even the seatbelt's always buckled. But right now, the state of those technologies, really we don't use the word autonomous when we're in
Yeah, right,
the
right, right, and
level
I
two
when I
low.
said it, I'm like, "That is not the right word," and I don't know the right word to use, but I knew as soon as I
It
said
is
it,
the
I was
right word for the higher levels. Those are
okay.
automated vehicles, the level 4 and 5. The other systems are really advanced driver assistance systems. So that's really what they are. They're there to assist the driver still in control. They are the responsible party for our very litigious country. They are the responsible party in those cases. But yes, Mazda is very heavily involved in the deployment and development of our SAE level 2 systems. We of course are improving them like all of our technologies, but those right now are a convenient system, really. The level 2, the sustained adaptive cruise control and the lane centering. It's there for convenience. It's not meant. It has not proven itself as a safety system yet. And so it's not standard. You can purchase it on an upper trim vehicle. Of course, you're going to pay a little extra for something like that. It's like I said, a convenience, not a safety system. What we've really even invested more in is those truly safety systems, the level zeros, the level ones, things like I love talking about blind spot monitoring. It's the little lights, mirrors. You can alerts, visual alerts. Now that I'm very proud to say is standard on all Mazda vehicles. We don't. That's not a federal regulation. It's not even a rating. That's something that just speaks to our core philosophy. Is that we do not want to have people have to pay extra for something that is proven to save lives and reduce crashes. So that's standard on every vehicle that Mazda sells.
I love that. Okay, you and I could have 5 more podcasts. I have enjoyed this so very much. You are a wonderful guest. You're also a great representative of the safety industry, especially the vehicle safety industry. Thank you, Jennifer, so much for joining us. I look forward to hopefully having you on again. I really would. I think this actually might be the first time I've ever said, okay, I need to have another one of these and very, very focused conversation around some other things because I have so many questions. But thank you so much for joining me, and I appreciate you being on.
Thanks for having me. This has been a great start to my day. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I'm ready to go deploy more safety technologies.
Let's go.
That's it for today's episode of the Canary Report. If this conversation helped you reframe how you think about risk and safety, please do me a favor. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who needs to hear it. We're building a new category of safety and risk leadership, one that's faster and smarter. Leaders who aren't just empowered by tech, but whose wisdom is accelerated by it. To learn more about how Yellowbird's cutting-edge platform is empowering leaders to solve workplace safety and risk challenges faster, smarter, and at scale, visit goyellowbird.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Yellowbird pages to stay up to date. Until next time, lead with clarity, know first, and act fast.